one thing that you think influences your child's language development? There may be tons of things, but what do you think is the number one thing? The number one influence on your child's language development is actually you. Children are little sponges and they learn so much of what they learn from us. And how they develop their language, how they develop literacy, how they develop communication really hinges on the way that we communicate. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by understanding early communication and early development in our children. Why is that important to start so early? And the milestones that they should reach at different stages. And it's important to know those milestones because you can start to identify that something's going on. Have you ever noticed that children that have a difficult time with expression or speaking or sharing or conveying their thoughts often have a difficult time when it gets bottled up in emotions and it comes out in other ways? Expression allows them to be able to share what's going on inside, what's going on in their mind. It allows them to also understand the world that is around them. When children are hampered in their ways of expression, like a child who may not have a broad vocabulary or a child who may have a disability, you'll find that sometimes the way that they get out what they're trying to say is by acting it out. But sometimes it comes across negatively. So the more that you can have avenues for children to be able to share information, then the easier it'll be for them. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session. Whew, I'm so excited about tonight because communication and literacy are one of my favorite things to talk about. It was actually like my favorite time with my children. And I'm a big reader. I love words. I love how words can make things really pop and come to life. And just in case you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Rolanda Fabien. I'm with Bright Idea Consulting, and we are talking about communication and literacy and how to get those little voices to really express themselves. And it doesn't matter if your children are not really all that small anymore, because it's never too late, as I know from my own experience, to expand your vocabulary. All right, so let me also go ahead and start sharing our presentation. What is the one thing that you think influences your child's language development? There may be tons of things, but what do you think is the number one thing? Okay. The number one influence on your child's language development is actually you. Children are little sponges and they learn so much of what they learn from us. And how they develop their language, how they develop literacy, how they develop communication really hinges on the way that we communicate. Okay. And the examples that we provide for them. So let me talk to you a little bit about the difference between communication and literacy, because they are actually a little different. Communication is more about the give and take. It's using common symbols that represent the language, that represent different things. And you give and you take with those symbols to get a message across. Literacy is a little bit different because it encompasses the language, the communication, but it also is a little bit of an interactive, because we use books to imagine places we haven't been, right? Books can open our minds in that way. When we text or we send emails, that is using a form of communication to interact, to get a point across. We use signs and labels to help us understand the rules and the boundaries of the world. And the key thing is literacy even talks about or deals with when we're not talking, because you can convey a lot of information when you're not using your words. That's how literacy is different. Communication is words and symbols, but literacy is all of that and how we interact and how we respond with all those things that are going on. Just wanted to make sure we understood the difference, because sometimes it'll seem like I'm using them interchangeably, but they are actually two different things. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do, since I mentioned that a lot of what we do is nonverbal, that type of communication, I felt like I ran across this video and I said, this would be so good to share with our group. I couldn't believe it when I read this that 70 to 93% of our communication is nonverbal. We think that we hear and understand by what people say, but you can't rely on that all the time. How many times have you heard somebody saying something, but you got a different message? The words mean one thing, but their body language says something else. You say yes when you want to say no, and you say no when you really mean yes. Let's see what these children do when they meet a mime who doesn't use words to communicate, but they need to get a message. Now, I want you to notice how the children respond culturally as much as they respond nonverbally.
Hi, my name is Desmond. Now I'm getting confused. Can you speak? Did you lose your voice? What do you do then? Oh, I know mime.
You're right!
Yes. Do you live in France? Why aren't you wearing a striped shirt? I guess that's a good enough answer. Have you played charades before? Was it easy? What gave you the idea of being a mime? Oh, when you were young, you saw a mime acting?
Look at this. She's giving the whole story with no words.
And you were amazed. Can you take the hat off? It's not stuck. Can you teach me something? This is fun.
Celine, let's see you take a try.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here because I think you guys get the drift. This just goes to show you how much we communicate when we're not even using words, but we're still trying to get a message across. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by understanding early communication and early development in our children. Why is that important to start so early? And the milestones that they should reach at different stages. And it's important to know those milestones because you can start to identify that something's going on. And I'll tell you a little story about that as we go on. And then factors that may influence the way children's language develops. Okay, so let's go into that. The importance. Communication is so important because it impacts them throughout their lives. It'll impact them in how they develop academically, socially, and emotionally. Have you ever noticed that children that have a difficult time with expression or speaking or sharing or conveying their thoughts often have a difficult time when it gets bottled up in emotions and it comes out in other ways? Expression allows them to be able to share what's going on inside, what's going on in their mind. It allows them to also understand the world that is around them. When children are hampered in their ways of expression, like a child who may not have a broad vocabulary or a child who may have a disability, you'll find that sometimes the way that they get out what they're trying to say is by acting it out. But sometimes it comes across negatively. So the more that you can have avenues for children to be able to share information, then the easier it'll be for them. I noticed that in my daughter's, I mentioned she's in high school, and in high school, the writing has changed a lot. When I remember when I was in school, writing was very precise. We were taught descriptive language and we were taught how to expand vocabulary. And I find that that is one of the things that she struggles with. Remember, I told you I was going to tell you a story, and that story is about my daughter. When she was younger, one of the reasons I got interested in special education is because I have children that have special needs. And so when she was younger, and I noticed she was supposed to be at least making at a certain point, at a certain age. I'm going to show you that later in our chart, but she wasn't. And she just would watch everything, very observant, but not very engaging when it came to making the baby sounds and making. So I thought maybe I should have her evaluated. Maybe it's a hearing issue. She's not making sounds because she's not hearing anything. And so I had her evaluated as a baby through this program, wonderful program called Babies Can't Wait. When I had her evaluated, what we found is that she was language delayed. It's not that she couldn't hear, and it wasn't that she didn't understand what was happening around her. She just didn't know how to engage through language. And it took a long time and a lot of work, but we started making her say things. She couldn't have something that she was asking for. Even if she had tantrum, you have to give me some words to work with. And eventually she caught up to where she was supposed to be. And now she's a chatterbox. She's a teenager. Like I'll say, what happened at school? She'll tell me nothing. But then I say something and she'll just ramble on for about 30, 45 minutes. Can I get an amen? Anybody recognize children when they do that? Just start talking and just can't stop. I was glad when she started talking because I realized that there wasn't an issue with her learning language. She just needed a lot more probing. And sometimes it takes that for some children. And that goes into what are the factors that influence language acquisition. What can influence their language are some things that might be going on with them, either medically or some things that might be going on with them developmentally. But also, what are they being exposed to? What in their environment? How are we talking with them? How are we encouraging them? Because, like I said, when I started pushing her to use words and to express her thoughts through communication, her language started blossoming. And usually by the time she was 3, which is typical for most children, she had hundreds and hundreds of words that she could use. But that typically takes a lot of pushing for us to get. So those are some of the things that influence language acquisition. And let's talk a little bit about those milestones. So what I did is I put a chart together, and you guys feel free to screenshot this chart if it will make things easier for you. Because it is a lot of information. And if you're not sure of your child's age and what they should be doing at that age, this chart will help you. Like I said, when she wasn't talking, she wasn't making those oohs and ah sounds. Or when she started making them, she was much older. The ba ba da things that baby do really early. She was not doing those things. And I knew the difference because I had an older child, right? So my older child was doing all these things and then my younger one wasn't. But eventually, after working with her, she began to expand that language and started calling things by their name, even if it was just one sound. And it's usually the things that they hear the most. For her, it was bottle, it was mommy, it was cup, it was dad, it was those things until she started putting not only one word, but several words together. And then those several words became sentences. And then I noticed that she was starting adding S's to the ends of words. It's so important to know these milestones because as your child grows and develops, these are the things you can expect. And if you don't see these things happening, don't hesitate to get involved and get started early with intervention. So here's the second part of that chart. This is what happens when they get to about 4 to 7 years old. About this time, they're really starting to get involved with those stories. Sometimes you'll see a child read a book. I know one time this child had me really fooled. I thought she was reading and she was so tiny. She was probably 1 year old, but she wasn't reading. She had just been read that story so many times that she was just saying the story that she had heard, but she made connections with that book and with those pictures. And she knew the story based on the pictures and what had been told to her. But you'll see them also start to write around this time. They start to expand their language through writing. They'll manipulate the sounds of words. They'll have conversation with you. They'll take their turn when it's time to speak or wait or try as much as possible to allow you to finish the sentence. Or you'll see them talking with their peers and they'll be taking turns and having a conversation. They'll recognize letters of their name. They'll start to try and mimic those letters on paper or scribble those letters on paper. So when you see these sorts of things happening, you can gauge what stage your child is in and what age they should be at that stage. And if it's not lining up, make sure you get some intervention. Okay. All right. All right. So I have another video here. Now, I saw that some of you are here with children who are not necessarily using words or they're nonverbal. And I love this video because now DiMarco is a person who is deaf and he talks about ways that parents can get involved and help develop language and what to expect for their children who aren't developing verbally at the pace of everyone else. So here we go.
Hello, I'm Nyle DiMarco. I have a message for parents out there with deaf infants. Many of you have found out that your child is deaf, and it can be emotionally heartbreaking. That deaf child might be the first deaf person you have ever met in your entire life. It's not easy, but I want you to know that there are a whole host of options that support your child and their early language acquisition. You can learn and teach your child American Sign Language. ASL in itself is a full language. It has its own grammatical structure and foundation, rules, and American Sign Language is on par with any spoken language. You can support your child's development of English through speech training, cued speech, signed exact English, or Pidgin Sign Language. There are a lot of different options. And also, there are a lot of tools to support your child and their development of language. You can use iPads, tablets, which has visual bilingual stories on them, family American Sign Language classes, hearing aids, cochlear implants. And the best part is you don't have to pick just one to match your child's needs. We encourage you to look at all available options. Try one or more to match your child and their early language development needs. We are including information and resources on our website for you to get started. Growing up, I had immediate access to language input. That is the main reason for my success today. Most important of all, don't lose hope. Don't change your expectations for your deaf child. There are historically so many people that your children can look up to and become a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, an app developer, or become a model, an actor, and maybe a winner of Dancing with the Stars. Your child will grow up and be able to tell you, I love you. Really, the main point is this is a beautiful journey. You will meet so many supportive and beautiful people. You will learn a lot of new things. And yes, you will have your challenges, but you and your child will overcome them. We are thrilled for you and your family. We wish you the best. And remember, we're behind you all the way.
All right. I said I had something here for people who have children who are nonverbal or who are language challenged or hearing challenged. Don't lose hope. Like he said, there are tons of people out there. And one of the ways that you can develop language in your child, I want to give you the 3 R's. If you're having conversations with your child and they're nonverbal or their language is developing, remember the 3 R's: reflect, respond, and repeat. Reflect, respond, repeat. There's also Yadira, you might appreciate this. It rhymes with BQE, but it's actually PQE. Predict, question, and evaluate. So what that means is you are actively listening and you are engaging them in the process of communicating by responding, by repeating what they're doing, by questioning, by evaluating, by asking them to make a prediction or by you predicting. All those things encourage more language, encourage more communication. Make sure you're getting them involved in things like cooking or involved in other activities because words are everywhere. When they're driving down the street, they can read the signs or because those symbols are all different and they can learn what the words are on those symbols. They can learn what the names of your streets are. They can learn the names of your favorite stores. When you go into the grocery store, usually things are labeled. Label things around your house. Those are really great ways to enhance their language. And even if they're not talking, they can learn how to communicate with you, the things that they need, the places they want to go. If something hurts, you can even teach them just the basics, teach them words or signs that will let you know or help them to communicate with you so that they can have a voice in this world. Okay. Being nonverbal doesn't mean you can't communicate or you don't have a voice. Okay. All right. So I hope that encourages you who have children who are nonverbal or who are developing language skills a little delayed. You can catch them up. Just keep working with them. Okay.